So it's just me and Jomso at the center tonight, but we have a nice little crowd of online folks. Some folks that have, I think everyone's attended the center at least once and been to practice before, so that's good.
Oh, good, good. So are we ready to begin?
Yes, for those that don't know, Lama Losang is the spiritual director of KTC Jacksonville. He is also the resident Lama at Gainesville KTC and is a wonderful teacher. He's also has a degree in psychology and brings a very unique view to the Dharma, as well as his skilled practice in Eastern healing as well. So we're happy to have him here the second Tuesday of every night at 7 p.m. And we hope that you'll take advantage of that. He's also been teaching on these advanced, or I should say the moderate level classes at KTD Monastery, which is every Wednesday night. He's done a few of those courses as well. So another chance to catch him, as well as his practices at Gainesville KTC. So we thank you, Lama, for being here, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the KTD classes that we have 5 more. I think we have a session, the first session has been completed, the first 10 sessions. We're halfway through the second series, and then we're going to begin series 3. I'm not sure, but if you go to the KTD website, kagyu.org, you can find those teachings listed there, and you can sign up for them. They're free, so you're welcome to join. And so it is designed for beginners, this first series. So it doesn't require, there's no prerequisites in that regard, and you're all welcome. So take advantage of that. We've got some fine teachers. I'm one of 10 teachers, actually, who are presenting this material. So I got the message from Mike that one of the 2 of the things we might talk about is the upcoming Saga Dawa, which is one of 4 important Tibetan lunar on the Tibetan lunar calendar called Saga Dawa. One of the celebrations, and the full moon day is called Saga Dawa Duchen, which commemorates the Buddha's birth and enlightenment and parinirvana. So if you're not familiar with the term parinirvana, it means that when a Buddha passes away, he doesn't really pass away. He's still available because, we really don't die. A Buddha certainly doesn't die, but neither do we. We just continue based on our causes and conditions, and hopefully we are reborn in a pure realm or in an auspicious situation. But we are celebrating this day of Saga Dawa, which is the 23rd of May this year. It goes from the calendar, the Tibetan calendar is based on the lunar calendar. So it began, I believe, the May 8th was the new moon, and May 23rd is the full moon, and it goes to June 6th, which is the next the new moon. So that is the we call the month of Saga Dawa, this in the lunar calendar. And it is said that during this period of time, particularly on the day May 23rd, that our actions are multiplied 100 million times. So it is a very good day to involve yourself in spiritual activity, to think about doing positive actions, turning your mind to the Dharma, doing practice, or making donations, or those things that are considered positive, from a dharmic point of view. So, we make every effort to efforts in practicing Dharma and in generosity and in compassion and virtuous, meritorious actions and purifying our negative karmas, along with remembering the Buddha and his activities. So that's the main point. It is said that this particular time is celebrated by all of Buddhists around the world. So we commemorate, as I say, the birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana of our perfect and most supreme teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. And in other Buddhist traditions, it can be known as other things, Buddha Purnima or Vesak or Buddha Day, but they are sometimes celebrated slightly different times. But this year, it is on the dates that I mentioned. So that is one of four. So observing precepts, is what we do. We think about the, many Buddhist traditions, there are precepts observed by lay people. So these, on the specific days like this, when I say they're magnified or multiplied many times, sometimes taking these lay precepts, it's an auspicious time for taking precepts. And in fact, this on the 23rd, I'll be giving refuge vows, and I just looked at an email from Michael asking maybe on the 29th if we could do that, and I'll check the calendar to see it. I just saw that. But if we don't do it at this particular on the 29th, we'll see if we can find a time. But having said that, I will be doing it on the 23rd. If there's anybody listening that wants to take the refuge, this is really the first coming on the path. When you've done your due diligence, you've attended the Jacksonville KTC, you've read the books, you have practiced cultivating, a meditative mind through shamatha, and are looking for a way to continue on the path. We can say that taking refuge vows are, you take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and the noble Sangha, or the community of practitioners. That is what we mean by taking refuge, which is considered, the first coming on the path. And as I say, there's great blessings that go with that. And if it's done at a particular time, it really helps to solidify and to create the blessing and the merit of taking those vows, which are not killing, not stealing, not misusing sex, not lying, and not abusing intoxicants. So on these special days, that is important. So, there you can do, retreats or different kinds of things. You may even just consider fasting, or maybe not eating meat on that particular time if you're not vegetarian. And with the idea of benefiting beings, this is the time, that we turn our mind again to the Dharma, and we perform these kinds of things. And giving, to the centers or to the lamas or those kinds of things, the generosity, cultivating merit through generosity and moral and practicing what you've been studying is very important. It's called the month of merits. The Saga Dawa is called the month of merits for Tibetan Buddhists. And Dawa means month in Tibetan, and Saga or Saka, sometimes you see it either S-A-G-A or S-A-K-A. is the name of a star prominent in the sky during the 4th lunar month of the Tibetan calendar when Saga Dawa is observed. And it's considered most auspicious. Let's see if there's anything else that needs to be said about that.
Lama, are there, besides practice, are there at the monastery, are there any celebrations that are done during any of the 4 Buddhist holidays?
Well, the way we make merit, is again through all of the practices that can be done. Sometimes people make pilgrimages, like to KTD or to the centers, and doing a korwa, or going to stupas, circumambulating the stupas. Many pilgrims go to venerated monasteries, temples, and stupas, and pilgrims, travel to be in the presence of the Holy Spirit persons, and circumambulate a shrine or holy place, which means walking clockwise around the holy site, and chanting mantras, such as mantras to white or green Tara, Om Mani Padme Hum, the mantra of Chenrezig, or the medicine Buddha. So these are ways that one practices. So yes, there is usually some practice like that is done in the monasteries. So there's, we observe all the precepts, as I mentioned, not to kill, not to steal, not to misuse sex, not to lie, not to abuse intoxicants. Those are the lay vows. Of course, monks and nuns have many more vows than that, but we try to maintain, I said that your good actions are multiplied. Well, so are your negative actions. So we try not to, we try to keep our mind in that way, and make merit in the meritorious month of Saga Dawa by observing the precepts I just mentioned, and personal practices and mantras, the sadhanas, such as Green Tara, Medicine Buddha, and sometimes life release. You may have heard of that. You can, we've released crickets or worms or things like that were destined for death as food for, go fishing or things like that. And you can request lamps to put on shrines, or request pujas from the monasteries, as I mentioned, pilgrimages to sacred places, visiting the temples or gompas, and venerate the stupas and shrines. And giving, that is the first, generosity is important. So dana, or giving, and especially, to the monasteries or the KTCs or monks, is considered also most auspicious during this time. Donations to the poor, and donate to people in need, those who are homeless or otherwise needy in that way. And I mentioned, butter lamps. Lamps are always seen as a way to banish the darkness, and it's kind of a symbol of removing our kleshas. And so we offer lamps for our loved ones or for ourselves, that mean we attain liberation. And also I mentioned, go vegetarian for at least Duchen, which is on the 23rd. Ideally for the whole month, but certainly to just be mindful of that particular day, the 23rd. And as I mentioned, you can release animals intended for slaughter, and release them.
Lama, you mentioned a term, I'm sure everyone's familiar with, korwa.
Hoa?
Was it koa?
Korwa, yeah. Korwa is, it means just to go around. So, sometimes just going around the temple, or going around the stupa, that's, or just doing mantra. Sometimes we think of our guru on our on our right shoulder. So we'll go in a circular fashion, and we're circumambulating our teacher as well. We're very skillful in trying to create these meritorious actions. Yeah.
Yamcha also mentioned Nunye.
I believe Kempo Penchon is doing Nunye.
Yes, he's doing a new. Yes, he's doing a Nunye. So that's excellent. Nunye, so you take vows for the day. That is most auspicious. Any other questions about Saga Dawa? So chanting the 12 deeds, of the Buddha, that is also something that we remind ourselves of the life of the Buddha and his 12 extraordinary deeds, which it is said that all the Buddhas will demonstrate as well. So hopefully that gives you some insight. There are 4 particular celebrations that we do in the course of a year in Buddhism, and that is one of the prominent ones. And again, Saga is named for a star that is prominent in this lunar month, and Dawa means month. So it's the month of this prominent star, basically, what it means.
Or
Go ahead.
Or it'd be a good practice for just lay practitioners who may not have the praises of the 12 deeds available to them to read through, or they're not familiar with sadhanas or for mantras, beginners.
Yeah, just doing whatever practice they do. I mean, it could just be sitting for a while. It could be, refraining from eating meat. It could be doing life release. It could be circumambulating. If they have a Buddha, a shrine, for their practice, just circumambulating the Buddha. It is your mind. This is the thing where you're praising the Buddha and the Dharma. So reading texts, that is fine. For meditation, meditation, gom, the word gom means becoming familiar with. So we're becoming familiar with our mind, and that can be done through the direct experience of our meditation. That can be done by pointing out instruction from reading our teachers. It's when you have a text by, a realized teacher, what they're saying is like pointing out instruction. They can guide you. They can point out the way to achieve liberation. And so we study that. And by reading that and contemplating that, this is the time. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to really cost you anything. But as I mentioned about dana, or being generous, just giving something to a homeless person that you would normally pass by and ignore, you can give them $1 or whatever is appropriate for your situation. It's the possibilities are vast and innumerable. You can always find ways to cultivate virtue in your mind stream. But generosity is a big one. Not lying is a big one. So, when we look at the different aspects of unwholesome actions, when we look at 10, the 10 unwholesome actions, as we say, are 10 negative actions, we don't want to take life. So as we say, be vegetarian, don't take the life of a being, don't eat that being. And, don't take what is not given. So you're not stealing or taking anything. You're avoiding the sexual misconduct. And that can take a lot of different forms. Not lying, not sowing discord, avoiding harsh speech, idle gossip, covetousness. So, I mean, we see our minds, oh, I want that, I want this, why don't I have that? We get to watch our mind, and ill will or wishing harm on others, and just general wrong views. So these are these, we call these the 10 unwholesome actions. So we refrain from those. And anybody can do that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, Lama, thank you.
Okay, good. Other questions, don't hesitate to ask. I really, this is a time for asking questions, and it may be related to what we're talking about, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about this. I mentioned 4 sacred occasions. This is the second one of the year. Chutoduchen, or the Day of Miracles, is the first one. It's in the first lunar month of the year, and it's often the time that we hold Munlam prayer festivals. Saga Dawa is the second. Chokurduchen is on the 6th lunar month, where Buddha Shakyamuni first turned the wheel of Dharma. And the 4 Noble Truths, we celebrate that time. To the 5 original 5 disciples in Deer Park near Sarnath. And the Bob Duchen is the last in the 9th lunar month, and it commemorates Lord Buddha's descent from the God realm of the 33, where he had gone at the age of 41 to repay the kindness of his mother, to teach her, Mayadeva. And so, who had been reborn after she passed away several days after giving birth to the Buddha in Tashita heaven. And he taught her and the other gods the Dharma for 3 months. And so Labab Duchen is, we commemorate, he returned to earth at that time, and after being in the God realms and teaching them.
Poor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my Tibetan is pretty poor, but isn't Dawa also just means moon?
Dawa does, yeah. This is, yeah, so it does, yes. Dawa does mean
Basically from moon to moon that month.
moon. That's right. Yeah, so just meditating, within the samadhi, or with a vast immeasurable love, if you can do that, that is magnified and multiplied tremendously, and that brings merit. So you're turning the mind to the Dharma in whatever way is good for you. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about tonight, I think, was about the Bodhisattva vow. Or is that correct? You've been reading about Bodhisattva?
Well, we had a question about the Bodhisattva path, and if I don't know, Mary, if you wanted to talk a little bit more, maybe if you had any background to the question. Sorry, on the spot.
Hi, Lama. My name is Mary. Nice to meet you.
Nice. Yes, thank you for being here.
I've been hanging out for a while, and I've been, meditating for a while, and, just basically applying the practice as scientifically as possible. And lately I've been resonating with things that relate to the Bodhisattva path, I would think, and people have just been bringing it to my attention. And then, recently I've made a more solid relationship with my teacher. His name is Lama Chuga, and we've been working together. And
Where's
you
Lama
know,
Tuna? Where is he or
he
she?
is in British Columbia up in
Mhm.
Vancouver, and he spent some time at Sammy Ling in Ireland. He spent 12 years in retreat, and I kind of met him on accident because of YouTube. So,
Well, that there's lots of ways, and I'm not sure if it's an
so,
accident or not. There is some
so
karma.
that's how I found the Dharma, is
Yes.
because of the algorithm, and he is definitely an authentic, you know, teacher in the lineage, and I'm very grateful to have found him, but I'm also grateful that I found you guys in Jacksonville, and some, like, a group that's a lot closer for me to be with.
It's important,
So
we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And Ananda, had said the Sangha is very important to the Buddha. And the Buddha said it is the most important. Yes, the Buddha is important and the Dharma is important, but to have a connection and Dharma brothers and sisters to practice with really keeps your practice going. So it is very important.
yeah, and I know that, like, since I can't be with, like, my Lama physically, like, the best thing for me to do is to commit to my practice and commit to my family, my new family who I'm practicing with, right?
You should look at
Um,
it like that. That's exactly
yeah.
right.
So, I've just, lately been resonating with things that I've been learning about the Bodhisattva path. So I was just interested in, hearing a teaching about that, and um, just learning and being here, and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, well, there are different levels or phases of being, we should say. We have a phase of insight, which is uh, a lasting direct insight known as realization. And as we practice our shamatha, we tame our mind, and we're actually able to deepen our samadhi, deepen our realization that leads to insight, which is the first bodhisattva level called supreme joy. And so the bodhisattva, if we're talking about the bodhisattvas progress along a path called, they're the 10 bodhisattva levels until all is perfect and one has become a Buddha. Which you will do. We all have Buddha nature, and we're all destined to be Buddhists. Some are, we're all different places on the path. But as we progress along the path, somewhere along the way, we may want to take the Bodhisattva vow, just like taking the refuge vow is the way in which one becomes a Buddhist, taking the refuge vow. Taking the Bodhisattva vow is the way in which one enters the Mahayana stream of Buddhism. As with the refuge is, this is not merely a symbolic formality. The vow represents a heartfelt commitment, and it is the influence of that commitment of the mind. One could say it's the presence in the heart that makes a Mahayanist or a Bodhisattva. And the Bodhisattva commitment has the two distinct parts. There's aspiration, which, we aspire to be Bodhisattvas. We aspire actually to be Buddhas, but on the way, we practice bodhicitta. And the essence of the Bodhisattva is cultivating bodhicitta, loving kindness and compassion for all beings. So the commitment, as I was saying, has two distinct parts. It first comes the aspiration, and then comes the practice, the realization. That's absolute bodhicitta. But really, only those at the highest levels, really only Buddha, might achieve that level of realization, and we are all on the path to that realization. So, when we look at the phases, as I was beginning to say, there's the ordinary being who's kind of immature and living in the 6 realms and collecting karma, more or less. And then there's the bodhisattva experience, who has decided that indeed they wish to continue on the path to liberation and progress along those 10 different levels. And there's the Buddha, there's a Buddha. And there are, as you know, there's many Buddhas. There have been many Buddhas. There will be many Buddhas. You are a Buddha, and you will eventually be a Buddha yourself. Some people think that, there's one Buddha, but, there are many Buddhas. And because we all have Buddha nature, we all have the ingredients they're unstained, and we can't do anything to improve it, and we can't do anything to tarnish it. It is perfect in the way it is. We just have to come to the realization of it in its totality. So it is, the very nature of a Buddha's wisdom and purity, as well as the qualities and activity of a Buddha that exceed anything that we could possibly imagine, but we are on the path to discover it. So that is the heart of what it means. And the first of the bodhisattva aspiration is often expressed as a profound wish to attain enlightenment, as I mentioned, in order to benefit all beings and bring them to enlightenment too. No one wants to suffer. We all want to be happy. Unfortunately, we're a little confused about what's going to bring us happiness. And we pursue things that seem to bring us more suffering if we attach ourselves and cling to the very ephemeral things that are always changing. That's why we take refuge in something that has some real value, like the Buddha, like the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the implicit commitment is to nurture as purely as possible this wish and its accompanying ethics as the basic mental component of bodhicitta, the aspect of loving kindness and compassion for all beings. So the aspiration serves as a basis for that second, deeper pledge, which is to commit this and future lives to the actual bodhisattva practice. And through practice of the 6 paramitas or the 6 perfections, we bring ourselves to that state. So one takes, just like the refuge vow, one takes bodhisattva vows. And there's a ceremony just like there is for refuge. And in the Tibetan tradition, one would often wait until it were possible to take one or another of these vows from a master, someone of great living bodhisattva. And these vows and their ceremonies will be explained, you can read the different texts about that. But devoting, the advice about keeping the bodhisattva motivation and practice alive and continue to improve your capacity to grow your bodhicitta. So, in the beginning, the main way in which we study the bodhisattva practice is through the combined cultivation of aspiration and practice. So these two have to be inseparable, because The state of mind of a person at any given moment will determine whether the actions, they are performing are bodhisattva actions or not. When the aspiration or inspiration, motivation, and guiding light is not present, that means bodhicitta, the action is not a bodhisattva action. It may look good and may have all the outer form of generosity and conduct and meditation or whatever, but it is no longer bodhisattva generosity and bodhisattva conduct, and therefore the result it generates doesn't contribute directly to our enlightenment. We have to have our motivation, the motivation of bodhisattva mind, known as bodhicitta. So this is all important. It is huge and vital task to radically change the mind until it reacts to circumstances naturally as a bodhisattva would, with that loving kindness and compassion for all beings. So we do that also, by cultivating mindfulness, and awareness through our meditation. That's important. It's how we stabilize the mind, the shamatha variety, and that leads to deeper immersion into the samadhi, a deeper absorption into the nature of mind without distraction. But first we have to tame the mind with a shamatha or tranquility meditation. Our minds are so wild, we often start our training by trying to take 21 breaths without distraction. And, we breathe all the time. We think, oh, sure, I can breathe without distraction. But our minds, that we're projecting into the future, reflecting on the past. Rarely are we really in the moment and stable. But until we are, we really can't direct the mind to realize its nature, which is clear awareness. It's always filled with some kind of, the monkey mind. So we practice shamatha. And some people say, oh, I want to do, something more elaborate, something more exotic. But you really can't do any of that. You shouldn't forget the sacred purpose of our practice, which is to tame our mind and to benefit all beings. Yes, we're cultivating mental muscle.
So, great.
So, in all Buddhism, it means remembering impermanence, suffering, no self, emptiness. In the Mahayana, it means remembering the Bodhisattva teachings and applying them more and more to each situation until they become second nature. It means recalling one's own teachers, personal instructions, so about how to act or react, until it becomes second nature. It also means recalling the particular objective. For instance, meditation, that means remembering to stay with the particular focus of that practice. So we're mentioning breathing. So just if the focus is on the breath, to cultivate that mindfulness of the breath. And the natural companion to mindfulness is awareness. It is like the witness, it is maintains the awareness of body, speech, and mind. It observes whether the purpose, the sacred intention is actually being fulfilled.
Some of us have had the short Bodhisattva vows, and other of us have had the longer format Bodhisattva vows. What about for some of our beginner students who have not yet had the opportunity to take these vows? What is a good beginner's way to engage the mind in bodhicitta and start behaving more like a bodhisattva?
The same thing we're talking about is to tame your mind and cultivate virtue, avoid wrongdoing, and taming your mind. That is the essence of the Buddhist teaching. And so in so doing, we begin to see our skillful actions and the things that are not so skillful. We begin to see them more clearly, and having that clear awareness without having stability, up to this point, we don't see how our mind is so wild and how it's something happens and we have this knee-jerk response. We need to create a little space. So that really is freedom to choose, how we're going to respond and to cultivate virtue. So we're talking about the Bodhisattva path. That means looking and becoming familiar with the 6 paramitas. So that is important. But we can't do anything until our minds have some stability. Mindfulness, of feelings, we may see the arising of some emotion, and it starts to make us, we should immediately say, oh, I'm feeling anger, or I'm feeling, the pride, or I'm feeling jealousy, or whatever it is that we're experiencing. We're aware of it as soon as it arises. And we can follow it as we usually do. But first, the meditative aspect of mindfulness of mind is cultivated by placing our awareness with one's thoughts and mental activity, just as one did with, when you can do walking meditation. And as Thich Nhat Hanh said, imagine walking like your feet are kissing the earth. You watch your mind, in a state of equanimity and equilibrium without being distracted and pushed here and there. We have no freedom in that. We have to first become aware. And that's really what mindfulness is. So here one is being mindful of the mind being the observer, mind the experiencer, and the subject, as opposed to people and things. We think that other people bring us happiness, or that things are going to bring us happiness. It has nothing to do with anything outside of ourselves. We are constantly looking at things and making judgments and liking or not liking. And these are the things that really get our knickers in a twist. So when there is meditative familiarity with the subjective mind, one needs then to cultivate wisdom. This is the mindfulness of mind. We have lots of notions about this self, which is just an aggregate, of stuff that we call self. We talk about the 5 aggregates. So that is, it's often in the sutras, they talk about a chariot, that's often the example used. So is the wheels the chariot? Is the, what is the chariot? Where is the chariot? The chariot is just a combination of different things, and we call it a chariot. But really, there's no chariot. We talk about our body, but is there a body? No, it's composed of bones and blood and hair and organs and stuff. It's form. So the 5 aggregates, as you know, are some skandhas, as it is called. This body is firstly form, is usually the first thing we talk about. Specifically, what one sees, in other words, the shape, the color, human form, all physical or mental forms, and feelings that can come out of that, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. The cognition, we recognition of things, and mental creations. There's said to be 51 different mental activities and consciousness, through the sense objects, and mind and different aspects of consciousness. These all are aggregates that come together and we call I or me or self. But, we start to disengage from this particular accumulation of things. And where is it? So it begins to develop a sense of emptiness. Non-self is an important aspect, of course, of this Buddhist tradition. And whichever system one uses, mind is observed meticulously and discovered to be impermanent. Mind is different from one life to the next, from one decade to the next, from 1 year to the next, and so on. It is a constant state of change. No lasting thing can be found that we could call mind. But still, we entertain the idea of a lasting mind, a lasting self, even though it is never found. Where is your mind? Where is your self? You can look for a long time. We entertain a total kind of illusion about this. So we have to investigate it. That is, the Buddha was a scientist. He was saying, look deeply at this situation that we're in, and that illusion dominates us.
Lama, if we just practice shamatha meditation, will the Bodhisattva path begin to arise naturally, or do we have to have the training, or do we have to have the
No, that's only to stabilize the mind, to make it workable. We still need insight, that's where Vipassana comes in. That doesn't remove the kleshas. Until we have insight and clarity as to what I'm talking about right now, and to see the illusory aspect of this body and our projections and all of those things. Once we can look at that clearly without distortion and understand emptiness, which is really the essence of insight, and that is the first level of the Bodhisattva path, which we call the joyous. We can't attain it Buddhahood, that's for sure. And then we have to cultivate the things we're talking about in the Bodhisattva path. But it's not enough just to tame the mind in that way. We have to eliminate all of those kleshas, all of those negative emotions, all those obstacles that obscure our Buddha nature. So that's once we've stabilized the mind and we can rest in that samadhi for extended periods of time, that's where the insight arises, and that's where true progress begins on the path. But one follows the other, and we work them together for sure. We'll never give up shamatha. We have to keep the mind in a tranquil state, and now it's not so easy. With our lives are so complicated, but we do have to spend the time to maintain our realization of emptiness and see things as they are, empty of any essential aspect. It's like a dream, it's like dream stuff. And just like in a dream, it seems very real. We're in it, we feel it, we see it. We're in it. And this life is not much different than that. So we have to understand emptiness. And everything really, that this is a pure realm for those who have eyes to see it. It's Shakyamuni Buddha's pure realm. Yeah, so that ultimate investigation that we're talking about, that insight is the ultimate nature of the mind. We recognize our Buddha nature. We recognize our, the clarity, of mind. So the most refined form of such investigation is found in the traditions based on the teachings of the Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom teachings. That's the essence of our mind. That's our Buddha nature. So on the relative level, it is by long-term observation of mind that we become to understand directly and intuitively how the successive instances of consciousness, relate to and trigger other, each other. And so it's habit, this thinking, this mind of ours, its habitual forms, we immediately project or analyze and compare and contrast and judge. And this continually repeats itself. And becomes strengthened, instead of reducing it, we strengthen it and become more egoistic. The I becomes stronger unless we see through it, through that illusion. Does this make any sense?
Yes, it does, Lama. I have another comment or question, or maybe a Vipassana meditation. Is there any of our deity practices that connect with that practice?
They all do. I mean, every time we do a practice, we rest the mind. So we do the creation stage, that is like shamatha, where we're training our mind to focus and on the aspects of the deity, and it's as much as we can, as clearly as we can. That is shamatha. And then when we finish doing the recitation of the mantra of that practice, and we rest the mind, before we go on, that is an aspect of Vipassana. We're resting the mind in its natural state. And then we dedicate the merit and like that. But yes, each of those practices contain all of this. That's why it's such a skillful means. That's the Vajrayana. Yeah.
I think sometimes when we talk about Vipassana meditation, we talk about, this idea of kind of looking at the mind and forget that the like medicine Buddha or Chenrezig is also part, or we're doing those meditations.
Yes, absolutely you are. Yeah.
And if we're doing those practices at home and we're comfortable during those meditation periods, do you recommend a time frame that a practitioner should do?
As much as you can.
Much as you can. Okay.
That's why we do 3 years and some months. It takes a while to develop it, and we are so distracted for the most part, and we spend maybe 20 minutes once a day if we're lucky, and the progress is going to be slow. So doing a retreat and reminding yourself how to do these things and to deepen your practice, it requires time and the art. It's no matter what you do. If you're going to be a neurosurgeon, that doesn't happen overnight. If you're going to be an artist of any kind, a musician or something, that doesn't happen overnight. But to know your mind definitely does not happen overnight. We've, since beginningless time, been wandering in samsara, and we do have to see clearly. And so we have to have the right instruction, and we have to apply it. So I don't think there's a number we can say, okay, you do this this amount of minutes. It is, you should be doing it 24/7, actually. You know, at all times, your mind should be turned to the Dharma and your mind. So, as I say, when you're walking or standing or laying down or eating or showering, or you're mindful. It doesn't stop. It's not just on the cushion. How much, when you say how much time. So what we want to do is bring it to our daily life. In particular, you know, we have to be mindful 24/7. Even in sleep, you know, we talk about lucid dreaming, and we practice that as a skillful means. And you can train the mind to be lucid and to and use the dreams in a lucid way. But that does require time and effort. But it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. And it just depends on how important you think it is. You know, if you don't think it's important, you're not going to spend time doing it. It's pretty easy. It's a pretty simple equation. You just have to decide that this is something that's worth doing and important, and you're going to do it.
Lama, we have a question from Grace. Grace,
Yes.
you'd like to unmute?
Yep. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Lama Losang. Always a pleasure to see you.
Yes, thank you.
You know, this question might come out of left field, but I think it's still related to the subject. So, and it is because I think what I heard you saying, and Mike prompting you a bit, was you really have to immerse yourself, right, into the practice, and you know, whether that's going on a retreat or whether that's even, you know, being at your house and kind of withdrawing, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
kind
you
of
could do a retreat at your house. Certainly, you should have
exactly.
a place
Yeah,
to do that.
having an at-home retreat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wherever you are.
So here's the core of my question is that, and I very much appreciate the discipline of the practice, right? You and John So, et cetera, the ones that I do now, is that, let me ask you, is there any bridge that you see? I'm assuming you still pay attention to the rest of the world, like the Western world or whatever. Is there any bridge that you see to any, and it can be centuries ago or current, any great thinkers of the Western ilk that seem to bridge into the type of practice, or is closely allied to the type of practice that you do?
Well, it's very specific to the teachings of the Buddha, the practice that we do. And I'm not that familiar with a lot of other practices. I was raised Catholic, and I was an altar boy and being groomed for the priesthood, as I've mentioned before. But the Buddha has a method where and as I say, I don't know about all religions, but I don't see a method as skillful as what the Buddha provided. So that's all I can say about that. You know, there are many wonderful thinkers, but thinking is not really the answer. You know, philosophies are not really the answer. Having the direct experience of the nature of your mind is a very individual thing, and we have to remove all the obstacles that prevent that from happening. And the Buddha was very skillful in doing that. And if you follow the path of the Buddha, and yes, you do have to immerse yourself in it. What is it that you do? What kind of?
Yeah, it's because I was going to say, so I, by the way, I was raised Catholic too, right?
Yeah.
So there we go. But you
And
know,
I loved it. I loved all the ritual and the chanting and the incense, and yeah, I marinated in that for many years.
Yeah, I know we all did. But so I don't, so maybe I asked the question from this angle. Like if you were gonna pick, if you were gonna pick up a book, let's pick up a book and it doesn't really have anything to do with the Buddhism that you practice. If would there be a particular book that you would pick up to read because you had an interest in it and it may not be, something you know about?
There may be, but I wouldn't waste my time on very much because
Mm,
it's a distraction. And, as a bodhisattva, one would not distract themselves in some other secondary path, but to develop the methods described by the Buddha to the best of their ability. And that would be a distraction from a certain point of view.
mm. Okay,
Stay on,
understood.
stay on task.
That's right. Well, they did that. They did that in Catholicism early on. I can remember them wanting us to keep on task, right? For
Yeah,
sure.
well, that's the only way you're going to succeed. What do you
Yeah.
do for
I'm sorry.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm retired now, but what I used to do is I used to work in a corporate setting negotiating contracts.
And
So
how did you get to do that? What
I
did you have to take?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I learned on the job. Yeah, I learned by practicing.
Well,
I
you answered the question.
Yeah, there no, and it's funny you should ask that question because when I got into that profession, very good question. When I got into that profession, there was no degrees. Like, if you wanted to be say I wanted to be a chemical engineer, right? Well, you would go to a college and they'd have chemical engineering courses, right? And then you'd get your degree and you go out and be a chemical engineer. But that type of profession that I got into, funny you should say that, is that the colleges didn't even have those curriculums. The curriculum wasn't even really thought of, and it wasn't a discipline in the colleges. So your point's well taken. Is that people like me who had other skill sets, right, could migrate over, and we learned on the job.
And
Basically,
even if you
we
did
learned
have
on
a
the job.
degree, you'll learn on the job. The degree
Yeah.
is not going to make the job easier. You have to learn directly with what it is you're doing.
Hands on.
Hands on.
Yep. Thank you.
And we have another question from Mary. You want to unmute yourself?
I think it was more like a comment about staying on task, and I relate to that a lot because I notice as I've been practicing and like staying on task, like removing distractions. I notice that if I focus on Dharma more in a certain week, like I listen to more teachings or I listen to more mantras at work while I'm just doing menial tasks, like I notice more things that I'm supposed to notice, right? In my daily life. So like staying on task to me means like being more consistent in my meditation and sampling myself more consistently during meditation and during my day-to-day activities when I'm trying to apply the mindfulness and to be as aware as I possibly can.
That is
So
mindfulness.
so
That's what
staying on
mindfulness is.
task is a part of this, right? So yes, like it's like naturally we could be interested in other things like music or philosophy or all these other things that are distracting, right?
That they're distractions, and our mind goes to that. Were distracting ourselves constantly. How many times do you pick up your phone to look at, Facebook or whatever it is, and to just distract yourself? So, it is a matter of intent. It is a matter of priority and what's important. And so we have to decide that for ourselves.
Mm.
But it's important to have this conversation, and to realize that time is short. When we think about the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, the first one is this precious human birth that we're very fortunate to have. And we have the capacity, and we've entered the Dharma, and we can practice, but do we? And we know that we're going to die. That is for sure. And the other thing we don't know is life is impermanent. We don't know when we're going to die. It could be tomorrow. I've suffered heart attacks and strokes and everything else. If any one of those could have taken me out in a heartbeat, literally. We better see clearly.
Mm.
The Buddha was very realistic, he was very realistic when, we talk about the Four Noble Truths, or we look at his teachings. These are the laws that are, we can't argue with them. It is the way it is. So, we can't argue with them, but we'd be just chasing our tail. So it is a matter of realizing the truth and then practicing. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's pretty direct. It's not a big mystery. It's a supreme psychology. I always say that, in the introduction that Mike gave, he said that I have a PhD in psychology. I taught psychology. I trained psychotherapists. And I will tell you from my experience that there is no greater psychology than Buddhism. If you want to know the mind, study Buddhism. And we're coming to that more and more. In the secular world, mindfulness and these practices, some therapists or some people would like to claim that to be their invention, but this all comes from the Buddha.
Great, Grace.
So, Lama Losang, for a beginner, then, is there a class you would recommend? And actually, are they all done in person? Are they all done in person, or can they be remote? Are they?
All of these are remote.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
You sign up for them. And if you sign up for them, you can review the ones that have already passed. You have access to them. And this is designed for just what you're talking about. How do we get going? How do we prepare ourselves? And how do we develop, as practitioners? That is the intent.
Okay.
We have wonderful teachers, the Kempos and the Lamas are putting this together, and you've got good instruction, and you have an opportunity to ask questions. So, to answer that question, I would say yes, attend.
And the section of those classes, I believe, have been posted on YouTube, Lama, right?
Yes, they are.
So would I go to, hey, Mike, I asked you for that URL. Would I go to kagyu.org and sign up?
Correct. So you can register for the class there and attend any of the sessions. I believe there may also be a link to the YouTube channel as well, if you'd like to go watch all the past first segment of the classes.
Yes, I'm not sure which ones are up now, but yes, they will be if they're not already up. I think the first series is probably up, and the second series is in process, and the third series will be starting soon.
Okay, so in YouTube, what would I search on? Jack's Tibetan. What would I search?
You'd have to go to kagyu.org and sign up for the class, and then you'd be given the access to it. It's free. Okay. You still need access to it.
Okay, very good.
And Grace, if you have any problems, just shoot me an email and I'll help you out.
You got it. Thanks, Mike, as always.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, hey, Mike and John, so all we have to hear is Lama Losang had a birthday too. When you guys had a birthday, huh? I thought I'd add that only because he's here tonight, so I figured maybe the three of you were clustered around the same time, and it's April or August, early May, right?
Mine's July. Yeah,
Okay,
mine's July.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're within days of each, and Casey are all within days of each other. Must be something about the Dharma there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Well, we'll have to find the third one for you guys, for you two.
I believe it's Lama Karma.
Yeah.
Very close one.
Yeah, and certainly keep up with the centers. You know, there's wonderful teachers. Lama Karma does a lot of teachings that are available. Lama Kathy is a wonderful teacher, and she has many things available. I have things online as well that you could just search Lama Losang. There's lots of things available if you. I mean, that's the good news about the internet. About this media is that there are things available worth looking at. So it's just a matter of finding them.
Indeed, I will.
Anyone have any other questions about their practice or about things they've been reading or anything else that is intriguing?
It's funny. Just one last one for you, Lama. It was funny when I heard you mention Thich Nhat Hanh's name. So questioner thought, really probably more of a question. What would you think of the differences? I mean, I know that Buddhism has different traditions and practices in a lot of the Southeast Asian countries, but do you find many differences between the Tibetan version that you practice and say what Thich Nhat Hanh was doing?
There's somewhat, yeah. I mean, there are three paths that we talk about: the Hinayana or Theravada path. There's the Mahayana path, and there's the Vajrayana path, and they all agree with the teachings of the Buddha, but there are different methods in their application. And they are slightly different in their orientation. But it is a matter of what you resonate with the most. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Mahayana practitioner. He knows about bodhicitta, what we're talking about, and the bodhisattvas, being one himself. So everyone is different. That's why the Buddha taught so many different ways to appeal to all the different mind streams. So it is the one that appeals to you the most. Are they different? Yes. Different teachers, even in the same lineage, teach differently and may have a different approach, but they all basically practice within the scope of the Buddhist teaching.
Okay. Thanks.
So the Bodhisattva, this is the Mahayana view to benefit beings, and the Bodhisattva that carries over the Mahayana. The Vajrayana is just another aspect, an additional aspect of the Mahayana, with some maybe different methods, but it is a Mahayana practice. The cultivating the mind of enlightenment, cultivating bodhicitta. The technique or the process may differ slightly, but the end result is certainly the same. It is said, that the Mahayana path can take eons, and the Vajrayana is a little quicker. One visualizes themselves as the Buddha, and this as a pure realm, and so it is. Its emphasis is slightly different, but again, the goals are the same.
I can't imagine there to be any, what's the word I want, friction between or contention between the different traditions.
They each build on the other, and they are very complementary. There should be no friction.
Yeah.
That would be a violation, actually, of one's vows, to see one in a degrading fashion, or I'm better, or no, you should not see that. They all form a particular the vehicle, which is the Buddhist teaching.
Yeah. Well, good to hear, only because, I guess sometimes, from the Western view, right, which I know your was your origin, from the Western view, oh my gosh, sometimes really, you can even think about it in the Protestant, right? The Protestant sect, which has, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a handful of tradition. Well, I'll call them traditions, right? Like a Methodist, a Presbyterian, Calvinism, Baptist, and so and I guess sometimes sometimes I think that they're even in the whole Protestant umbrella of traditions that they do get a little contentious, and I'm thinking it's more of a Western trait to be contentious more than an Eastern trait. So I wouldn't expect any contention between the Buddhist tradition.
Unfortunate, it's more of a human trait based on ignorance. So, I mean, you can see conflicts in Buddhism. I mean, they may exist, but it's not the Buddhist teaching that's in conflict. It's the individual who doesn't have the right understanding or the right view.
Mm.
I mean, the person could be Buddhist, but really harbor wrong views, about it. So they're not all Buddhists who practice Buddhism.
Right.
We had a question from Johnson.
While I was up at KDD, I was studying Jamgon Control's Treasury of Knowledge, Book 5.
Yeah.
And it's very specific. And yeah, and not an easy book to understand.
Which one is it? Did you say?
Treasury of Knowledge, Book 5.
Yeah. What is Book 5?
Well, what you said it was the Bhikshu vows.
Bhikshu vows. Okay.
So I was just giving you a heads up because I have a lot of questions about some vows that were written over 2,500 years ago and how to place them into Western life. Some of them, not putting your hand on your cheek when you're sitting.
Yeah, not crossing your legs. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Yet I know wonderful skilled teachers who sit with their hand there when they're teaching. How far is an earshot? You cannot walk with a person along a certain length of the road within an earshot distance. You can't go further than an earshot distance. Well, how far is an earshot distance? There's just all these, walking with your hands behind your back. There was all these things that I don't understand. I'm sure that 2,500 years ago, there was a significance to this. I'm just wondering about, because, I still have this drive to take these full vows, but some of them I just don't understand how they work and
Well, some vows supersede others. For example, the Vinaya is superseded by the Bodhisattva vow. So if you're doing something for the benefit of someone else, that is your primary vow, to maintain that. And in the Vajrayana, it's your Samaya vow to your guru. So if he told you to do something that appears to be in violation of the other Vinaya, that is not a violation. It is a moving feast in a certain kind of way. So it has to be considered in a particular kind of way. Yes, I hope that answers the question.
It does, Lala. I was going through it, I was like, oh goodness, how can I do all these things? And You know, and then I go for a koa and I realize that my hands are behind my back because this is how I stroll. This is how I walk.
Yeah.
And then I gotta move my hands and then it becomes very confusing.
Every
for me.
step you take, if you're cultivating virtue as a bodhisattva, you can walk on your hands, you can walk with them behind your hands, over your head, or whatever way. You know, it is what is in your heart and it's what is in your mind. Those both things being the same is most important. And following, you know, in that sense, in the Vajrayana is doing what your teacher taught.
Thank you, Lama. And since you are my teacher, I will continue to listen.
Okay, very good. That's appropriate.
Mhm.
But if you should hear something contrary by a Karmapa or someone else, follow that. But I don't think you will.
We have a question in the chat. It says, I also grew up Catholic too. It has been difficult learning a new way of life at age 52.
Yeah, it may be difficult, but you just have to you know, decide, you know. And the Buddha said, you know, don't take my word for any of it. You know, see what works. So if you apply a particular method or a particular practice, do it, and do it with strong intention and see how it works. Or if you have questions, ask the Lama about it and straighten out any of those questions. That's, you know, this time is important for just that kind of thing. You know, if there's what makes it so difficult, there really shouldn't be a contradiction. I mean, this is a mind training. So you could be Catholic and practice shamatha and insight meditation and the things we're talking about, and be a bodhisattva. They're not mutually exclusive. So I don't know what the conflict is, but that would be something that we may be to sort out, because it can be a problem for you. So it would be good if that there's some resolution or some way of seeing that can straighten that out.
Lama Losang,
Yeah.
is it, you know, I think about, I don't know, I think about a lot of what you said tonight and prior times. Is it hard? Is it hard for you and your other fellow practitioners to live in such a, well, the epitome of the Western world in the US? Is it, I mean, there's just such a,
It's
such a,
opportunity.
yeah.
I mean, it's we get an opportunity to practice. Everything is practice. So and you get to see your mind under all these different circumstances. You know, to be in a cave somewhere, you don't have the same opportunities. We have lots of opportunities to see what our response, our judgments, all of our critiques, and our likes and our dislikes, and all those things, and to see the emptiness of it all and the impermanence of it all. Just wait a moment and it'll change, whatever that is. And all of those things and people and events that are constantly changing. This is samsara, you know, this is a samsaric world. And you just have to have the correct view. And there's no contradiction to that.
Mm. Yeah, just thinking about how it must be. So I guess you're learning to take a phrase from a movie, watching the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Right. Yes. And that's, you know, in our state of mind, it is neither good nor bad nor ugly. It is just what it is.
Right, right. Mm. Well, it's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing to what the analogy you just made, because yeah, it everybody, I think that's how we stay in samsara, is that we do qualify it as good, bad, and the ugly.
Exactly. We make
And you're able to, yeah, you're able, and fellow practitioners, to kind of filter that qualification out.
it should be. Yeah.
Mm. Interesting.
All right.
all-
I think,
Yes, go ahead.
We all have the potential, right?
Oh, yes, all sentient beings have Buddha nature, but again, since beginningless time, we have encrusted it to a certain degree, and it sometimes feels hard to get to, but it is still there, illuminated as it has always been, and as it will always be. So it is just a matter of recognition. You know, the Buddha said he's awakened. He's awakened to his Buddha nature, as you will. But you know, it won't happen without some practice.
Thank you, Lama.
Okay, well, I think, you know, we've hit our time, so maybe we should dedicate the merit. So, you know, when you dedicate the merit, always after your practice, dedicate the merit. And you can do that in whatever way you like. And in fact, you don't have to use some kind of a canned prayer that you read out of a book. You can do this out of your heart. And it can be simple, but we do want to dedicate the merit. That is cultivating bodhicitta, the loving kindness and compassion for all beings. So in order to do that, we can just say that, you know, at this very moment, for the peoples and nations of this earth, and for all beings everywhere, we wish them enlightenment. And may not even the names, disease, famine, war, suffering be heard. Rather, may pure conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase. And may supreme good fortune and well-being arise in the minds of beings. And may all be auspicious for us. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your listening, and hopefully your practice and contemplation about what we talked about. Continue your practice.
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Lama.
Lama Losang.
Thank you, Lama.
Thank you. All
For
right,
sharing.
I'll see you next time. Yes.
See you
night.
again.
Okay, Lama. Thank you, everybody, for joining. See you next week.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jomso.